Imagine if one day Skittles just went away. Halloween would never be the same. Some of these old-school candies suffered that fate, but others have been sticking around longer than you might be able to believe.
Bazooka gum was hard as a rock, and the flavor lasted less than a minute. But what else could you buy with the 5 cents in your pocket left over from lunch? It made your jaw ache, but those few seconds of flavor and the resulting bubbles you could blow were totally worth it. Plus, there was the novelty of the comics inside, featuring the adventures of Bazooka Joe and his trademark eye patch. That alone made this classic candy a favorite of kids everywhere.
Jerry, don't do that. That is so annoying.
Bazooka Joe.
Even though this classic gum, which was first sold in the 40s, is still on shelves in some stores, it's virtually unrecognizable. The red, white, and blue packaging has been replaced with pastel colors, and those comics we loved have been gone since 2012. In their place, you'll now find puzzles and brain teasers with codes to unlock online video games. There was probably no candy parents hated more than Whistle Pops, the sucker that actually was a working whistle when you first unwrapped it. As some respite for adult ears everywhere, the holes closed up and the whistle stopped functioning not long after it hit your tongue.
It's a lollipop with a on the top.
Though the original Whistle Pops were discontinued, Chupa Chups has reintroduced them under the name Melody Whistle Pops. Despite their coolness, however, they're nowhere near as widely available as they were once upon a time. You can still find them if you're willing to look, but we're still waiting for a wider comeback. In the early 90s, there was one surefire way to prove your toughness to your friends: the Cry Baby Challenge. The packaging claimed the extreme sourness of this bubblegum lasted about 40 seconds, but it seemed so much longer than that when it was your cheeks taking the beating. You ruled the playground if you put more than one in your mouth at the same time, but you couldn't let anyone see the tears in your eyes. Kids still love to test themselves with sour candy, but unfortunately, Cry Baby is no longer the king of the playground. It's hard to find Cry Baby gum today, maybe because today's parents remember their own playground pain and don't want their kids going through the same thing. Kids today just don't have the patience for Jawbusters, which were first sold in 1919. Willy Wonka's everlasting gobstoppers had nothing on these candies. You didn't chew them, you didn't really suck on them either. You just kind of held them in your mouth until they disappeared or your cheek went numb, whichever happened first. Plus, the flavor tended to wear off after about 5 minutes, so you sometimes forgot it was even in there until you started drooling on yourself. Did anyone ever actually get to the end of one of these everlasting Jawbuster candies? We sure didn't, and we'd like them to make a comeback so we can try again. Every time a child of the 90s saw that well-known paint can on a gas station counter, their mom knew she was in trouble. If they had a dime in their pocket, they were getting one of those pieces of bubblegum. Their mouth, lips, and probably hands would be brightly colored within minutes. And yes, that was the entire point of this candy. It's got the word splash in its name for a reason. We're pretty sure parents everywhere rejoiced when tongue splashers went off the market, but you can still buy something similar today under the name Double Bubble Painters. It's just not as cool when it doesn't come in a paint can. To be completely honest, when Ouch bubblegum was popular, it wasn't about the actual chewing of the gum. The taste was nothing special, and some of us may have actually thrown away the gum as soon as it was opened. No, it wasn't the gum that was wanted, it was the package it came in. Those awesome tin cases made to look like bandage containers were used to store everything from change, to rocks, to actual bandages. Sometimes you'd even refill it with bubblegum that actually tasted good. Hubba Bubba still makes Ouch bubblegum, but the tin case is gone, rendering it completely useless in the minds of many. If you ask a child of the 90s what the best flavor of Laffy Taffy was, there's no question they'll tell you Sparkle Cherry. Something about that crunch of the glitter sprinkles and the sweetness of the stretchy taffy made this a delightfully satisfying treat.
Each chewy piece is exactly 50% Laffy and 50% Taffy.
Unfortunately, while Laffy Taffy is still widely available, it's not very easy to find Sparkle Cherry in stores anymore. You can still order it in bulk online if you have a major craving, but it's not as affordable as it once was. These days, you can expect to pay around $2 for each stick of Sparkle Cherry Laffy Taffy. Nostalgia ain't cheap. This strange crystal powder that turned into gum when you chewed was so short-lived, there is only a small group of people who actually remember it. Anyone who tried it, though, can tell you it was just as delicious as it was strange. They can also probably tell you that, yes, it was possible to chew an entire jug at once. Today, you can buy something similar called Sneaky Stardust, but we know a lame copycat when we see one. Maybe if we all join the online movement to bring Bubble Jug back, we'll see it hit shelves again. Until then, we'll have to make do with our memories. Yes, Runts are still widely sold in stores, but the Runts sold in stores today are nothing like the Runts of our childhoods. They're still in the cute fruit shapes we remember, but the less observant Runts fan might not notice that the shapes and flavors aren't all the same. The original Runts came in orange, cherry, banana, strawberry, and lime. Throughout the years, they've added and removed different flavors, and today they also include apple and grape, and lime is no longer available. Peanut butter Oompas were basically giant nuggets that were half peanut butter, half chocolate, covered with a candy coating. They were one of two candies along with Scrunch that launched the Willy Wonka line of products that now include stuff like Nerds and Everlasting Gobstoppers. They hit shelves in 1971 and cost a mere 10 cents. Oompas were popular for a long time, but they were eventually discontinued in 1982. Even though there are still candies out there called Oompas, they're unfortunately nothing like the original. These candy bars were only around for a little while. They debuted in 1989 and they vanished in 1990. Sure, the commercials were vaguely annoying, but we were willing to forgive for this delicious treat. So what happened? Some say the family behind parent company Mars had something against peanut butter, so they pulled the product despite its success. We don't know if that's true or not, but even if Mars execs don't like peanut butter, they could have left some for the rest of us. We still miss that combination of salty peanut butter, crispy, crunchy cookie bits, and chocolate coating.
PB Max, we mean peanut butter.
Never before has marketing been so honest as it was with garbage candy. They came in little plastic garbage cans, just like the name suggests. When you popped the top, you found hard but powdery, tart but sweet candy in shapes like bottles, shoes, and fish bones. You can still get them from Canada, but they're not quite the same. The original candy came from Tops and was the brainchild of the same person responsible for Garbage Pail Kids. There definitely seemed to be a theme, and we do miss those little garbage cans. They were handy for some post-indulgence toy storage, and while we might be more likely to keep paper clips in them today, they were still undeniably neat. Astro Pops had it all. They were sweet, lasted forever, and to a kid they seemed to be as big as your head. Plus, what kid doesn't love space? You might not have known this when you were little, but Astro Pops had some serious space cred. They were invented in 1963 by some actual rocket scientists who quit their day jobs and decided to make candy for a living. They created special equipment to make the multicolored rocket-shaped pop and completed the career change of a lifetime. Astro Pops were around for decades after their space race era birth. They were discontinued in 2004, but there's good news if you still have a craving. A longtime Astro Pop fan negotiated the purchase of the rights to the candy in 2010. After rebuilding all the specialty equipment needed to make them, Astro Pops were reborn. You can find them in specialty candy shops now, and fingers crossed they'll be more widely available someday. You're familiar with Pop Rocks, right? It's the candy that was fun as a kid and hurts your teeth as an adult. Pop Rocks hit the shelves in 1976, and they were so popular that General Foods released a spin-off candy called Space Dust. Unfortunately, Space Dust was never as popular as its rocky counterpart. It was essentially a more powdery version of Pop Rocks, but the combination of a distinctly drug-like appearance and a name similar to Angel Dust meant that parents weren't fans of it. Space Dust was renamed Cosmic Candy, but the original name still haunted it. The hype over Space Dust made it super popular for a while, but the whole thing just sort of fizzled out. Here's a fascinating footnote, though. There's a good reason for the space theme. Pop Rocks creator William Mitchell also invented Tang, the orange drink made for astronauts that was later marketed to families. Bonkers were everything that candy should be, including fun. If you're old enough to remember Saturday morning cartoons, you'll probably remember the commercials. They starred boring-looking people who eat a piece of Bonkers candy, then get hit with a giant piece of fruit, much to their amusement. While it didn't exactly make sense, it definitely made an impression. The soft, vanilla, and fruit chews were hugely popular in the 1980s and 1990s, until even they were eventually discontinued.
Bit-O Honey might bring back fond childhood memories of grandparents pulling a piece of candy out of their pockets to share with you and your siblings and your cousins. That's partly attributable to the candy's nearly 100-year history. This honey-flavored taffy with little pieces of almond embedded inside was first introduced in 1924 by the Shutter Johnson Company. Bit-O honey bars featured 6 different individual pieces of candy, each wrapped in wax paper, which made them easy to share. Over time, the brand started making smaller, individually wrapped pieces that were similar to other wrapped taffies. Over the years, Bit-O Honey's parent company has changed hands several times. You're not very likely to find these bee-emblazoned candies in the average supermarket or drugstore nowadays, but Amazon sells big bags if you've got a hankering for the old-time treat. Candy cigarettes were first introduced as a way to give kids an opportunity to mimic their parents' smoking habits. One brand of candy cigarettes was even advertised with the slogan "Just like Daddy." Different brands provided different types of candy. Some were chocolate sticks, others were chalky white sugar sticks, and still others were paper-wrapped bubble gum that you could blow on and be rewarded with a puff in the form of gum dust smoke. The brands producing the fake cigarettes even used the names and logos of popular cigarette companies, much to the delight of the tobacco industry. This not-so-subtle advertising paid off. A 2007 study performed by researchers at the University of Rochester found that people who consumed candy cigarettes as children were much more likely to smoke as adults. In the 80s, when the government began cracking down on tobacco advertising, especially ads aimed at children, candy cigarettes became much more difficult to find. You can still track them down, though they're typically referred to by the less controversial moniker Candy Stix. Online retailers are your best bet, like Retro Candy Online, where you can find Lucky Lights candy.
I'm 21 years old. I'm a man.
Oh, okay.
Bottle caps look a lot like the original Sweet Tarts and Spree, but their more distinct cap-molded shape and cola-flavored taste sets them apart from these other tart favorites. Furthermore, bottle caps are also a little more chalk-like than Sweet Tarts, which may actually contribute to a somewhat effervescent feeling when chewed, not unlike the bubbly sensation of drinking soda. These pop-flavored candies originated in the 70s, and while they're good for the occasional nostalgic trip down memory lane, the orange, grape, and cherry flavors pale in comparison to other fruit-flavored candies. That said, the root beer and cola bottle caps are a little more interesting, as they break from typical candy flavor varieties. Unfortunately, you can't buy rolls or boxes of just the root beer or cola flavors. So when you're looking to pick up a box or a roll of bottle caps, Amazon is probably your best bet, as it's easy to stock up on just a couple boxes or to buy in bulk. Most companies suffered significant hardships during the Great Depression, but for some innovative brands, that time actually opened the door to new possibilities. That's exactly what happened when the Boyer Brothers Company hung out its proverbial shingle in 1936 to sell its flagship product, the Mallo Cup. This cup-shaped chocolate-covered marshmallow looks almost identical to a Reese's peanut butter cup, which was invented in the 1920s. But it stands apart by featuring a whipped creamy marshmallow inside its hard chocolate shell. The Boyer family made these confections in their kitchen and started selling them door to door, and they managed to quickly gain a following despite that humble origin. While the chocolate cup corner of the candy market is clearly dominated by Reese's these days, it's still possible to purchase Mallo Cups. You can find them at somewhat unexpected retailers that have a bit of a folksy vibe, like Ace Hardware, Food Barn, Cracker Barrel, and Michael's Craft. And unsurprisingly, you can also score them in bulk on Amazon. Turkish Taffy is not really Turkish, and technically it's not taffy either. Mike Myers would have had a field day with that one during his old SNL routine as Linda Richman.
Franklin Delano Roosevelt's New Deal was neither new nor a deal. Discuss.
As it turns out, Turkish Taffy is actually a confection known as a short nougat, made from egg whites and corn syrup that's cooked before being baked into bars. If you've ever enjoyed the soft, chewy consistency of a fresh-pulled saltwater taffy, you should know that that is not what you experience when eating Turkish Taffy. These bars are so hard that customers often hit them against an equally hard surface to break them into smaller pieces. But once a piece is placed in your mouth, it softens and becomes chewy, with a long-lasting consistency that doesn't simply melt away. Turkish Taffy bars originally came in 4 flavors: vanilla, chocolate, banana, and strawberry. They were pulled from the market for about 20 years after the brand was sold to Tootsie Roll Industries in 1980. But then they were reintroduced in 2010. They can be purchased on practically any nostalgic online candy store. Is there anything more emblematic of a classic childhood than the whimsical and weird Pez candies? To be perfectly honest, as a food, Pez is not exactly the tastiest. But that's not necessarily a problem, as Pez's cult-like following is all about the funky assortment of dispensers that can become collector's items. It's worth noting, though, that the original Pez developed in the 1920s isn't the same product being produced today. The original Pez came in a tin, and the candies were round peppermints, not unlike Altoids. It wasn't until 1949 that the company introduced its first Pez dispenser to hold the now brick-shaped candies. And it wasn't until the late 50s rolled around that the company started introducing its novelty dispenser characters. Then, in the 90s, collecting Pez dispensers became a fad, with the candy appearing on the cover of Forbes magazine and in an episode of Seinfeld, and collectors convening in Ohio for a first-ever Pez convention. But as with all trends, they tend to peak, then decline. And while millions of Pez candies are still consumed every year, and new collectible dispensers are introduced regularly, they've faded from the collective consciousness and aren't as readily available in stores. So if you're ready to start a collection of your own, or if you're just feeling nostalgic, the best place to shop is going directly to the Pez website itself. Paper strips of colorful dots known as candy buttons might be more tantalizing than the tiny dots of sugar themselves. There's just something that's so visually appealing about having an array of brightly colored candies to choose from. And while you'd think the different colored dots would have different flavors, they don't. Well, technically they do, but the cherry, lemon, and lime flavors aren't particularly distinct from each other. On top of that, Candy Button's flavor in general isn't anything special. Plus, it's not uncommon to peel little pieces of paper off the strip along with the candy, leaving you with some less than appealing paper flavor in your mouth. So yes, these candy dots are fun to look at, as they fall into the realm of a classic childhood novelty, but they're less fun to actually eat. That said, if you have a sweet tooth, eating a tiny dot of candy one at a time can slow you down a hair while still offering a sugar hit. If you're looking to take a waltz down memory lane, you can buy candy buttons in bulk on Amazon, or you can try your hand at making them yourself if you have the right ingredients on hand. When it comes to candy, there might be nothing worse than Circus Peanuts. They've somehow managed to survive for well over 100 years, having first been sold as far back as the late 1800s. The fact that Circus Peanuts continue to live on despite their questionable flavor and texture must be a testament to nostalgia. Even a vice president for Spangler Candy, one of the few remaining makers of the confection, admitted to not being a fan in a 2006 USA Today article. Candy peanuts are typically sold in orange color, although mixed colors are also available. They're shaped like peanuts, but they taste like banana-flavored marshmallows. But even the marshmallow texture is off, as they're chewier than you might expect. The result is decidedly confusing, which clearly prevents them from being massively popular. Despite all those shortcomings, someone must be out there eating these things. Think of Pixy Stix as the candy equivalent of glitter. They're loathed by moms all over the world, but adored by kids even more. To be clear, Pixy Stix are nothing more than flavored sugar dust packaged in a paper sleeve. It's sticky, it gets all over everything if it spills, and it basically turns sweet children into sugar-fueled little menaces. It must have taken an evil genius to invent this treat. The history behind Pixy Stix actually makes a lot of sense. The original product was intended to be used as a sugary drink mix to enable kids to add flavor to water. When marketers realized that kids liked eating the sugar straight, the company pivoted and started selling it as a candy. So it took off as a product in the late 50s, and it continues to be sold today in all 4 of its original flavors: grape, orange, cherry, and Maui Punch. Wax lips don't taste particularly good, yet these weirdly wonderful treats have nevertheless remained on sale for more than 100 years. Of course, the draw for kids all over the world is their novelty. What rambunctious third grader, or third grader at heart, doesn't want to don a set of giant red lips or evil-looking fangs to make their friends giggle? And once the gag is played out, the lips can be eaten. They may not taste great, but they're sugary, which is pretty much all that most kids are hoping for anyway. The history behind wax lips involves multiple company sales, bankruptcy, and struggles with controlling costs to produce popular products. All that and the fact that they don't taste particularly great help explain why they aren't widely distributed today. But wax lips are still sold online and in candy shops nationwide. Although, as with most options on this list, Amazon is probably your best bet. According to a 2015 Eater article, Necco Wafers are practically indestructible. The article was talking about the wafers themselves in terms of how they have a 2-year shelf life and they're not affected by heat or cold. But that indestructible description could also refer to how they've stood the test of time.
I mean,
Smarty.
how old they are? What was it, 1887?
Yeah, I was asking. Oh, 1847.
Even after more than 100 years, the original candy wafers continue to be sold and distributed today, though their popularity has declined. That's in large part because the US government is no longer buying and packaging huge amounts of the wax paper sleeves to include as sweet morale boosters in soldiers' rations, as they were during World War II. And it certainly didn't help that the Necco company went bankrupt and shuttered its stores in 2018, effectively eliminating sales for 2 years. But much to the delight of nostalgic Americans, Necco Wafers reappeared in stores in the summer of 2020.